Welcome back to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and you can follow us on Instagram at JoshDJ57. That's JoshDJ57 on Instagram. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Get frequent updates about what's coming up. And our conversation concludes with Dan Rupple, who was supervising producer of The Price is Right from 1990 to 2000. Now, Dan, tell us about what led you to leaving The Price is Right, even though you loved the job.
The reason I left The Price is Right is my pastor asked if I would come on staff as his executive pastor. And in my mind, when he asked me, Josh, I thought, are you nuts? To leave The Price is Right and David Letterman to not even be the top guy at the church, be the executive. But my wife and I wanted to pray about it. We thought that's what God would have us do. So we went to Palm Springs for a weekend and just prayed. And we felt the Lord saying, I want you to do this. I want you to do this. In hindsight, it was a wonderful move because it opened the door to everything I've done over the last 20 years. That I wouldn't have had those opportunities had I stayed with The Price is Right. But so I decided to leave, and I went into Bob Barker's dressing room, and I said, "Hey, Bob, I want you to know I'm going to be leaving the show at the end of the season." And he said, "Oh boy, I hate to lose you." He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually leaving to pastor." And he said, "Dan, I think that's right. I've always seen you as the pastor of Price is Right."
Wow.
And Josh, to me, that was the biggest well done, good and faithful servant I've ever received in all my years of ministry and working in the media, because I thought, okay, my assignment here is done. That's what God wanted me to do, was to, really be a Christian presence on the stage, in the studio, and just lead with kindness and respect for your crew and value people and make them feel a real important part of what we do. And so I had so many people would find me. I had 100 people in the crew under me. It's a big production. And, so many people would find me back by craft services, and they go, "Hey, Dan, can you pray for my wife? I just found out she has cancer," or my child just got hurt, or my kids ran away, or whatever it might be, struggles they were going through, just asking for prayer. And I just loved working on The Price is Right. It was a great show.
How often did people, I guess, challenge you on your faith, or what kind of dialogue did you have with people who challenged you on your faith? Any types of memories of something that was like, that's a really good question, or great skeptical question that kind of, got you out of your comfort zone, but in a good way that, kind of like helped you kind of like, okay, well, let me answer that. Anything in particular stand out, whether it was Bob or somebody else on crew?
Not really. I think the fact that they realized that I had integrity, that I wasn't some kind of self-righteous jerk, that I was pretty level-headed, and they just saw it in me. They also saw. I mentioned that my wife, she struggled with 3 different bouts of cancer, very serious cancer. One time, the doctors at UCLA thought she may only have 5 years to live. Well, thank the Lord, she's still going 32 years later from that time, going strong. And but they saw the way I handled it. They saw the way I trusted God through it, and I didn't blame God. I did have one person go, "How can you still say you love God when He gave your wife cancer?" And I had to kind of tell him that's not the heart of God. I can't imagine walking through cancer without God. he's my rock, and he's the only one that can get us through such a difficult journey. I do remember one time where I would sit in the booth, the director's booth during the show would be next to the lighting director. And we were sitting there and talking. And one time he brought it up. He said, Dan, I think the way it works is if you're a good person, you go to heaven. If you're a bad person, you just cease to exist. And I said, I can see why that makes sense. I get that. I can see why you think that way. I said, but I look on it a little bit differently. I said, if there is good people go to heaven and bad people cease to exist, there's got to be a line somewhere. And wouldn't you hate to, at the end of your life, do one more sin and it just dropped you below the line?
Mm.
Yeah. I said, so who sets that line? It must be God, right? And he goes, yeah, I guess so. I never thought about it like that. And I said, yes, it's really easy to say Mother Teresa goes to heaven, Hitler ceases to exist in his terms. Mm-hmm. I can get that. But what about the person who's right there on the cusp? And I said, Christianity is totally different. Christianity is saying that the best people, and I can't, on your podcast, I can't show you my hands, but mm-hmm. let's say the best people are like a foot off the ground. And I said, so that's the best people. But God's line is like at the top of the Empire State Building. And so no matter how good we are, we cannot reach the line. But Jesus came to us, and he redeemed us, died for us, and he took us up above the line so we could spend eternity with him. And all of a sudden he got it. It was like a light bulb went on because it was very, I get this. This makes sense,
Yeah.
And he started changing from then on. We had a lot of wonderful conversations about the nature of God, the nature of mankind, and so it opened the door to a lot of wonderful discussions. Just being able to be there, being a Christian presence. And that's why I tell students today, I speak at a lot of Christian film schools, and I spoke at 16 a year ago. And, I tell students, or anyone who wants to make it in the entertainment industry as a Christian, don't see a position, a role, whatever it might be, as a stepping stone to further your career. See it as an assignment from the Lord, where God is saying, this is your assignment. I want you to be an ambassador for my kingdom on that set, on that sound stage, in that writer's room, whatever it might be that God's calling you to. See it as an opportunity to, be excellent in your craft. That's a given. Mm-hmm. But just bring the kingdom by being an ambassador, a representative of your faith. And that's what I tried to do. Just be, every day I want to represent God's kingdom in kindness and goodness, in just the way I treat people.
Yeah, definitely. And after you left CBS, how often did you have contact with Bob Barker as well as some other staff members there?
Not too much with Bob, unless I went back. I'd go back every once in a while and just visit, maybe have lunch with a couple of the key producers. And I'd say hi to Bob, and he was very, very friendly to me. But as it went ahead, of course, as you mentioned at the beginning, there's been a lot of iterations of Price is Right. Fremantle bought it from Goodson, mm-hmm. and then somebody else bought it from then, and then Barker left, and they changed all the people. There was only, let's see, when the Drew Carey years started, I think there was only 3 people that I worked with that stayed, and now those three have left.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really nobody there anymore in fact, I'm sure there isn't, that I worked with years ago. So I still, like I said, keep in touch with them, sometimes a phone call, more regularly just like on Facebook or social media.
Wow, that's great. And
I do the same with Letterman. I do the same with the Letterman crew. Obviously, he left a long time ago. But
oh, yeah.
Well, no, actually, I take that back. He left about the same time Barker did.
Well, yeah, Letterman left in Barker left in 2007. Letterman left in early 2015.
Was it that much later? Okay.
Yeah, what happened was I think maybe Letterman thought now that Leno's retired and Jimmy Fallon came in that Letterman would regain his crown as the king of late night, which he had lost about 20 years earlier. And that didn't happen. Fallon pretty much kept most of Leno's ratings and was still the top-rated late-night talk show host. So Dave decided to retire about a year and a half after Leno did. And then for about 3 months, there was no late show on CBS because they were renovating the Ed Sullivan Theater for
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert. It was interesting because longtime Tonight Show producer with Jay Leno, Dave Berg, actually predicted that Colbert was going to be the new host of the Late Show, and he predicted correctly.
Yeah, and it made sense. You know, he's a different animal than Jimmy Fallon or even Leno before it, or Conan.
Oh, yeah.
He's different. So they needed to go alternative programming and not another cookie cutter.
Yeah, counter programming, which seems like a lot of networks, this is just my opinion, have forgotten about, especially in, on network television daytime now. The Price is Right's good counter programming, while the other two networks have news instead of, different varieties of programs. That's one thing I just don't get.
Yeah. Well, I remember one time Barker called me in his dressing room and said, I got a fan letter saying, Bob, what's your favorite scripture? So, Dan, what's your favorite script? What's my favorite scripture? So I told him, I said, it's Psalm 23, because you are a shepherd to all the pets out there that need to be spayed and neutered.
This is the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We've been talking with Dan Rupple, who is the CEO of Master Media International, former supervisor producer at CBS Television for 10 years, working with Bob Barker as we pay tribute to the great Price is Right host who was on television for over 51 years. Just a quick question for you before we go. Was there any quote or advice that Bob gave you that is just awesome?
I hate to end your show on a downer note, but no.
That's okay.
No, I won't. He did not give me any advice, but he really showed me, as I spoke about earlier, just how great and professional he was.
That's terrific. Well, thank you once again, Dan, for being with us. This is the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and we've been paying tribute to Robert William Barker, who was born in 1923 and died just a couple months shy of his 100th birthday. And until next time, keep your mind on the things above, and as you hit that open road, don't be a slut on Spectator.